He said,
Recording in
"Write a check."
progress. Hey guys, thanks for being here. This is episode 4 again of the Milton James podcast. Today we have on the call my good friend and fellow accountability partner, Mr. Jeremiah Peters.
How about
Everyone,
it, y'all?
welcome Jeremiah. And luckily, I have the same script of questions, so we'll probably go through the same topics, and we'll probably answer some of the questions that were asked yesterday that were just magic. They were gems. And my man Jeremiah Peters is going to close just under 100 deals this year with him and his team. He's up in the Georgia area. I think it's Athens, Georgia.
Yep.
And so, Mr. Jeremiah Peters, please tell me about yourself.
So we have a team now of about 7. We have 5 agents, including my wife and myself. My wife takes the admin role and kind of does, office manager type of stuff. And then we have 2 admin assistants at the moment. We just hired our second one because our first one was getting overwhelmed, and we had 22 closings this month, which is our biggest month ever. But it's been an uphill climb to get here all the way through. We started out in 2017, and it was just myself. And then I hired my first part-time assistant before I ever made a closing, kind of. And he was waiting until I made my closing to get his first check. And I agreed to pay him like $150 a week or whatever, and he would just print out phone numbers. So, man, it's been a long 5-year journey and a lot of 16, 18-hour days, but it's so worth it to not have to work for anybody else. So,
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. So you've been in the business for how long?
5 years, 4 years and 9 months.
Okay, and so this is your biggest year?
Yeah, this is my biggest year, about $23 million in sales.
Wow, which makes you pretty much one of the top agents in your area.
Yeah, I'm probably number 5 out of 4,000 in my company.
Okay, so number 5, top 5, that's great. And so how did you get into real estate?
So my mom was in real estate for 25 years, and I used to ride around with her. She had subdivisions, when I was a kid and everything, and then the market crashed. So I saw the kind of struggle that agents went through that didn't prospect and everything like that. And then I got into real estate when my mom told me, "Hey, you're not doing anything with your life that I'm proud of." So, well, she didn't say it like that, but
Yeah.
she was pretty much like, "Hey, dude, get in gear here. You're sitting there in la la land." And so she paid for me to get my license, and then once I got it, it was game on. I wanted to be the best.
Nice. Now, you and I have something in common. My mom, who's listening in on this call, got me into real estate, kind of,
Yeah,
sort of.
that's right.
So there's a gentleman named Frank Orchilles who was my age, and I saw what he was making. I was like, if that guy can do it, I can do it. So
Yeah.
What was it? Was it just your mom pushing you and you listening to her, or was it something else?
I didn't know what anything was about in real estate, really. I just knew that I mean, getting into it, I had no idea. So, I mean, I just hopped in and I automatically just wanted to be the best. I've always wanted to be a billionaire. I've always said that. And people kind of laugh and shrug it off, but like, I'm going to do it. So, and I don't know what it was really. My mom, I've always wanted to make my mom proud.
Yeah.
And this year I sold more than I think she ever has in a year, and that made me pretty proud. So, but you got to think, when she was coming up, houses were a third of the price. So,
Right.
she probably would smoke my doors off if she was back in her prime. But yeah, I mean, just a lot of things.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, again, having a mother or a parent in real estate is huge because you kind of subconsciously see all the things they do well, right?
Yeah.
You see the money they make, and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. So what was it that kind of fueled you over the last 5 years?
Once I got into it and I realized, wow, I'm good at this. I thought I can beat everybody around me, and I want to create a future legacy for my children that I don't have yet. And the best time to create one for them is before they get here, so that you can spend the most time with them. So that and really just knowing that if anybody in my family ever needed anything, that I wanted to be able to have that excess money to be able to help them out, or, and then along the way, when nothing happens to my family and this is great, then I like to say, okay, well, I can give jobs to other people and help other people succeed. So that's kind of how I started thinking, oh, well, my mom built a team. Maybe I can take what I learned from her and kind of perfect on that, or, kind of excel on that and take it and run with it, and, fix any mistakes that she might have had the hindsight on that she couldn't do whenever, my mom was younger in the business.
I gotcha. I mean, because isn't that really the purpose of a parent, is to put your kids in a position so that they can do better than you? I mean,
That's
so
right.
that's got to feel pretty good. And so, as far as fueling, we talk about this concept of fueling, the energy, the motivation. What's fueled you this year? Like, why did you have the energy? Like, what gave you the energy for this year?
Just helping others succeed has been a great one for me this year. And I was kind of a one-man show for about 6 months. I had a buyer's agent that I was doing everything with, and he was doing about half the deals. I was doing about half the deals. And then around March, he had a family issue go on while I was on vacation. So I came back and hit the ground running. And I've always been self-motivated. You've got to be. Otherwise, you probably shouldn't be doing anything for yourself. And so I came back and did about 18 deals by myself in June. And, I realized I probably should grow my team out when I was going down the road, and my assistant was writing another contract. So I was going down the road, had my laptop on my console of my truck. I was in bumper to bumper traffic, and I'm over here writing a contract. My wife's writing a contract, and my assistant's writing another contract. We all had to have them out because it was time to go. So at that point, I was like, all right, I can't be in another position where I don't have any buyer's agents that are available right now.
I got you. So especially in this type of market, you need to spread yourself out so you don't miss any opportunities.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So who's been helping you along the way? The 5 years, the learning, the motivation, the accountability. What's that process been like for you?
So I've always been kind of self-hungry. I for the first 4 years, I didn't have a coach or anything. And then this year I decided to finally hire a coach to give me a little bit better of a direction and hop into things. I should have started out earlier doing that. If you don't have a coach, or if you're not on a team and you're starting out, you should probably jump on to a team. And later on, I'll get into what our schedule looks like. Mine and Milton's probably the same. I wake up a little bit earlier, because I'm like to be at the gym at about 5. But other than that, we have a pretty similar schedule. But yeah, I mean, just making sure that you're pushing yourself every day to learn more from the best people that you want to be like. So I always try to shoot my dreams just way out there and then find people that have achieved that already. So I know that I want to be a billionaire one day. So I try to find those little steps along the way that those people that already are doing. So like I listen to Ed Milet almost every morning.
Love
And then in cycles, I'll listen to him because he has a show like every 2 days. So he's worth about $750,000, and he's got good values, and he believes in Jesus like me. And so I think that that's a really big thing. And then kind of taking the steps from there and making sure that you just piece things together. This whole deal's like a puzzle, and you've got to realize what you want the puzzle to look like at the end, and then you got to realize what the pieces look like along the way to be able to pick those up.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, you mentioned them a couple of times. Gary Keller always used to say God, family, then business.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's what's kind of been fueling your growth, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So you got into coaching this year.
Yes.
Which is how we met.
Yep.
You stood up at a seminar, and I think it was South Florida, and someone said, "I'm going to introduce you to Mike," and you said, "Well, he gets to meet me today." I'm looking at this guy like, who the hell is this? I'm like, oh, this guy. Okay. And then I saw you at another seminar, and then we just connected because you hung out with my mom.
Yeah. Your mom's just like my mom, man, just with a little bit different accent. But I mean, it's like being at home when I met your mom. She would just, took me into her family. And that's the way my mom is. I wish I could get her to come to seminars, but she's not around being around a bunch of people. She's not like that.
Yeah, probably the thing that connected us. And then I was like, huh. Then I started noticing, I noticed we have a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
You're a big prospector, so am I. We have the same coach now, which is awesome.
Yeah.
We're about the same age. We're both 25. And so, you want to be the best. I want to be the best. And so what do you think was the key? And I think we asked you this yesterday because the recording got messed up. But what was the one key to your success this year? Just under 100 deals.
What did I say yesterday? I think it was pretty good.
Something about cows, but
I don't know. Probably there's so many things that are a key. And the key is you have to constantly want to be more and more successful, but not for yourself. The Bible says all selfish ambitions are of the evil one. So I think that the more that I grow, the more that I want to help impact the lives of other people. And the more you take it off the money, the more the money will come. And I think the biggest key is to be self-driven. You have to realize that there's a bigger purpose out there. And if you're doing it for yourself, you'll get burned out because I've achieved all the worldly possessions that I could ever really want. I don't know what else people could want at the age of 27. You got to be able to help other people out and do things like that. And yesterday after the podcast, I realized that. Sorry, that's my dog. After the podcast yesterday, I realized that helping other people is more fun to me than actually selling real estate. So I would like to figure it out. So I have a baby goat in here too.
Goats, cows, chickens. I get it.
100% not joking. This baby goat was going to die, so we had to bottle feed it. But I just want to do all kinds of things.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like your key to your success this year was the word contribution. Is that fair to say? Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, someone that meets Jeremiah Peters up in Athens, Georgia, they would probably think is kind of aggressive, a little bit abrasive, maybe a little cocky, but really you're pushing forward so you can help more people.
Yes.
Got it. That makes sense. And I love that about you, man. And so if you had to map it out, Mike always talks about, and we're both part of the Mike Ferry sales system and MFO. And, Mike always talks about the blueprints of a superstar. I had the good fortune of writing my blueprint last year. What would you say 5 to 10 keys to your success this year would be?
In 2022 or 2021?
Well, 2021, because 2022 is in 2 days.
Okay. So in 2021, most of the keys for my success were, let's start with the people around me. I mean, who you surround yourself with is very, very, very important. Okay. They will either bring you down if you let them or let you bring them up. And so that's why I spend a lot of time. They say you are who you hang out with, or, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. So when I'm on drives, I try to listen to audiobooks of people that have been where I want to be, or I try to get more knowledge and everything like that. And then just make sure that I'm always expanding my mind. Number 2, creating good habits is a really good thing that you should always do. And there's very small habits that help you along the way. Every little thing that you do is a vote as to the person that you want to be or your identity. And I think that it's very important that you start putting little bitty drops into that bucket, because that's how you fill it up and you form your identity. Another good thing would be make sure you have good systems in place. If you don't have good systems in place, nothing else is going to work out for you. So, you can, like lead generating. You can lead generate. I had 8,400 people in my database and probably was at 6,000 before I started making sure that I had the proper systems. So I just knew what I had to do. I just didn't know what to do with it. And then another thing is tracking your numbers. That's really going to help you get a long ways. That helped me a lot this year. With tracking your numbers, you keep up with where you are and where you want to be. I think looking at your trajectory is more important than looking at where you are, because if you can, like every year I've doubled. So if you can double every year, then you know that you're going to have to keep figuring out how to double. Anything less than doubling for me, I'm going to be so mad at myself. Yeah. Because I've done it for 5 years in a row. It's a tradition now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mike always talks about making at least a 20% increase in your units every year.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you can't also increase or double your sales price. So
Yeah.
if you go 20% increase on your sales price and 20% increase on your units, you could potentially double your income every year, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, good for you, man. So, one of the things you said yesterday was trajectory matters. You said it again today. What does that mean? I mean, that's a pretty powerful statement.
Your trajectory. So if you're at the top of a mountain, but you're pointed down
Mm.
and you lose that traction, you're going to be in a worse position than somebody that's halfway up the mountain, but they're moving at 100 miles an hour.
Mm.
So you have to keep in mind where you're headed and what your goals are. That's very, very important. I think so.
Got it. It's kind of like you always want to stay being a cash cow, right?
Yes.
Well, cow reference for you. And so you mapped out a few things you did this year. What do you think is the next couple things that you have to add to do next year? Like what are some things that you have to start doing better?
So I only did one for sale by owner sale this year, and I've never done one before that. I don't think I took like 16 listings in 2018 in one
Mm.
month on
Yeah.
for sale by owners, but I was like, I'm just going to get these listings no matter what.
Yeah.
And so I'd take them way too high and add my percentage in there or cut my commission, and it ended up being a nightmare. And so, I mean, this year I consider that my first for sale by owner, because it was full commission, full everything. And I got them over asking price and they couldn't sell it. So I consider that a success. But
Heck yeah,
next year,
congratulations.
yeah, thank you, man. Next year, I want to focus on actually getting into for sale by owners and expireds versus, like, I've always only done circle prospecting. So I think it's going to be a great thing for me to get into. There's just not a lot of them around where I am. So
Yeah. That's good. I mean, that's one of the beauties of being involved in any coaching organization. We get connected with accountability groups.
yeah,
We start to role play. So, for example, you might be really good at internet lead gen and circle prospecting, and I may share what I'm good at with expires and for sale by owners with you.
yep,
And so combining all of those things, you create one mega agent in each market, just different people.
that's
And
right.
so that's the purpose of these calls, masterminding. And so, if you look at the next year, I mean, what's your goal next year as far as units, income earned, and et cetera? What's your goals next? What are your goals next year?
My minimum units are 150, absolute minimum. Given that we did 22 this month, and we were very capable of doing that. I like to test my infrastructure here and there. I mean, I want to do it on purpose, but we have kind of a level. If we're below 10 under contract, I kind of freak out. But having 22 closed this month, I think that sets us up. We should be able to do 200 to 250 next year. I know that Mike Ferry and Ira always pushes whenever I have my coaching calls, make sure you get enough listings to be able to be how many sales that you want to have. But, I'm very intentional about our listings, and I talk to my database often. I need to keep up with my numbers better as far as contacts go. But, I think that we're definitely going to be able to probably hit 150 to 200 next year. I'd really like to hit 200 to 250, but I'm going to have to make some big shifts in some areas to do that.
Got it. And we talk about it all the time. So of the 22 closed, how many of them were buyers versus sellers?
You know what? I didn't think about that. So I had about 48% sellers this year.
Uh-huh.
And I did all the sellers on our team. So probably close to 50% were sellers versus buyers.
Yeah. Gotcha. Because a lot of the people that I talk to, in our mastermind group, National Prospectors, shameless plug, we always talk about that 1-to-1 ratio. If you want to sell 50 homes, you got to go get 50 listings.
Yep.
And so was it a matter of you getting 22 listings that turned into transactions, or were there, what was the source of those?
So I like to leverage everything that I get. And before this year, I didn't really have any sign calls. I don't know what it was, but I'd go get the listing, and I never heard anything from anybody. I think Zillow has changed the way that they're doing things in Realtor.com. Then you just click on the agent now. So we're getting more sign calls this year than we have. But yeah, we're leveraging those better, and we're for every listing that we get, we end up getting a buyer as well on at some point. So I think for our team personally, the rule of get a listing, get a sale doesn't work out, because every listing we get, we usually get 2 sales, whether that be from outside marketing or sign calls, you know, some way or shape. I can't really put my finger on it, because the sign calls, it's probably 25% sign calls, 25% Zillow, which I don't know if I'm going to continue to do that in the future, because their quality continues to dwindle. But, you know, it's just kind of coming from all sides.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, you know, one of the things I asked you yesterday was, you know, it's the end of your career. It's 10, 20, 30 years later. And someone's summarizing Jeremiah Peters, the impact he made. What would they say?
The biggest and the best there ever was.
There it is. That's awesome, man. So thank you. Listen, a couple things you said yesterday. I don't think you mentioned it again today. I want to point it out. Raise your thermostat. What did that mean?
So when I say raise your thermostat, you have to bump up what you think you're capable of. So like this month, we raised our thermostat to 22 transactions. You have choices to make there. And this is something Ed Milet talks about a lot, is raising your thermostat. Now that we've done 22 in a month, if I go back down to 10,
yeah,
it's not going to be the same ever again.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be just terrible, you know?
It's like base jumping down versus climbing a hill.
Right.
Climbing a mountain. And so, you know, determination and standards were 2 of the biggest things you said yesterday about, you know, what was the keys to your success, determination and standards. Right. I think it's contribution from just listening to you. And you know, you mentioned the 5-step system was leverage. You know, that starts with the coach. That starts with praying in the morning, leveraging out. I think you mentioned a few times, and then coaching gets you to collapse those time frames.
Yeah.
You also mentioned get the right team. You know, I think we talked about, you know, most people aren't great leaders of teams because they weren't willing to be bad leaders of teams.
That's right.
So
I was a bad leader for 4 years before I was a good leader for 6 months.
And I hope I continue being a bad leader so I can be one day a great leader. And so, you know, you mentioned great habits. You mentioned a book. What was that book on habits?
Atomic Habits. And I just recently listened to it, and man, it's just insane how on such a tiny micro level that you can get to with your habits that, you know, end up helping you. They have a compound effect. That's why, and that's where I thought about the trajectory. He talks about the trajectory of where you're going versus where you're at. And if you're building your habits up, you're going to get a compound effect, and there's no limit to where you can be. But there's a compound negative effect for every drop you put in that bucket as well if you do the wrong thing. Eating chocolate versus eating a piece of chicken breast is going to put you in an opposite direction for where you want your health to be. And so you can get down to 0 a lot faster than you can get up to 1,000,000.
Yeah. I think Will Smith, he talked about when his dad made him and his brother build a wall. And instead of looking at the whole wall, he said, you know, lay this brick as perfect as you can, the best as you can, and then lay another brick and just do it 1 brick at a time. That's kind of what you're talking about with trajectory. Awesome. So we got a couple questions, Mr. Jeff Wheatley, who is going to be back in a couple seconds there. And then I caught him at the wrong time. If you guys have any questions for Jeremiah, we got about 20 minutes here, 25 minutes. How can they reach you for referrals, questions, and masterminding?
Anything you ever want to talk about, you call me or text me. It's better to text me first. If you call me, I won't get it as long as it's between 8 and 11. My phone goes off at 6, so I have time to spend with my family. But my phone number is 706-410-8978. You can text me anytime. You can call me anytime after 11. And I had a few things that I wanted to touch on after we got done with some questions, by the way.
Oh yeah, very good. Mr. Jeff Wheatley.
So Jeremiah, you talked in detail yesterday about how you're keeping your expenses low. Can you share a little bit more about that?
So, all right. So I started out by spending too much, and it's not that my expenses are low. It's just that I'm leveraging those expenses to make sure that this month. We're going to make 5 times what the bills are for the month. So, no, maybe more like 6 or 7. I'm going to have to look at it at the end of the month. But,
Nice.
So, I mean, if I know that we can do that for 1 month, then we can keep duplicating that. So what you have to do is make sure that your follow-up is going to be a lot of that. You can get all the leads in the world and you can generate all the leads in the world. And you make all the phone calls in the world. But if you don't follow up with them, then your costs are going to be a lot higher per sale.
Kind of like eating a dozen donuts on a bike.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about
that. I think you mentioned yesterday you had a 100K month. You live in a double wide.
Yeah, do live in a double wide. I own 6 houses, about to close on my 7th, and I live in a double wide. And I don't own it.
Love it. And I jokingly said yesterday, for those in my mastermind group, do not live in a double wide. But that's great. I've seen some nice double wides now.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's a great double wide. But it's been completely remodeled, added on to, and everything like that. But it's on family land. I had to move back here. My grandfather was sick last year, so we sold our home, moved back here to take care of family, and then, hard to move away from the family.
Sounds like you've got some pretty good tax strategies going on that you hinted about.
Yes.
Once you're in the farm that you own, can you go any depth on that? I'm guessing you're paying a lot less taxes than the average realtor is.
Yeah, pretty much. So, number one, you want to get with a CPA that is real estate minded. I learned that from Rich Dad Poor Dad. With that being said, I went from probably 4 times less efficiency with a CPA that I did have versus the one that I'm going to next year, just because of some creative strategies that they have. Also, this year I bought 6 properties, so you're going to get the depreciation from that. And then I'm spending money. I just want to keep increasing the value of my assets. And from my understanding, I'm not a CPA, so don't take any tax advice from me. You want to confirm all this with your CPA. But what I really want to do is make sure that I'm spending as much money on assets as I possibly can, and figure out what all kinds of things you can deduct and just throw the money into that. And keep going there. So I'm fixing up. I'm buying fixer-uppers and I'm putting all this money into them. And then I'm going to cash out, refinance them. So I get the deductions from the fixing the properties up, and you don't have to pay out because it's not income, it's a loan. So that's just one of the examples that I use. And then I lost it.
You also said something about the farm. You also said something about the farm. The farm could be a pretty good asset there too, for some deductions, right?
Yes. So if you get a farm, my CPA told me you could schedule F1 as well as all the other things that you do. And then what you do there is you can depreciate tractors and all your animals that you purchase and things like that. But, for example, goats, they can have 2 babies per time that they have it on average. So, and then they can have babies every 5 months. So you can double the amount of goats that you have every year. All you got to do is buy the land, and then it pays for itself.
Wow.
Hey, for all the agents in Poinciana, Florida, that are you guys are getting excited. Listen, that's awesome. I'm about to buy me some goats. Anything else, guys?
I would just say that the biggest takeaway I have is so many agents are focused just on income. They're not focused on asset collection. And if you're only focused on income, you're going to pay the highest amount of taxes and keep the least. When you're focused on income and then turning that immediately into an asset, you're going to pay a lot less in taxes. And that's your biggest expense as a realtor. I don't care what your brokerage split is. Taxes is absolutely your highest expense in the long run.
Oh yeah. And another thing that I'm doing is at the end of the year, you can contribute, from what I've been told, up to a quarter of your net income to a SEP IRA. So if you're going to be in, one of those positions where you didn't think smart all throughout the year, or you didn't know about the tax efficiencies that you could be using, another thing that you can do is contribute up to a quarter of your net income up to, I think it's up to $56,000. So you can make $224,000 and then put up to $56,000 into a SEP IRA. So that's going to save you $56,000 worth of tax liability right there.
That's awesome. Now, in a couple weeks, I'm going to have my personal financial coach, Mr. Steve Colt, on here to kind of walk us through that. He was introduced to me by Mike Ferry, and one day I walked up to Mike and I said, Mike, I made $250,000, but I don't know how to manage the money. He goes, you need to talk to Steve. And so Steve has helped me double, triple that. And so anything else, guys, that can Jeremiah Peters from Athens, Georgia, can help you with today, other than sending him referrals?
All right.
You had a couple things that you wanted to make sure you shared, and that would be awesome.
Yeah. So rejection is something that I didn't talk about yesterday. We had somebody that called me afterwards and said he gets just tired of the rejection that goes on. And something that you really have to do, and it is absolutely necessary, you have to stop looking at the rejection as the problem, and you have to stop letting it get to you. You need to understand that every time you experience a piece of rejection, you're getting that much closer to a sale. So when you start out, you're probably going to have to get rejected 200 times to sell a property. Maybe even to go on an appointment. You may suck that bad, and that's okay. Because it probably took you a long time to learn how to walk. But then the next day you woke up and you knew how to walk. But then you started to run. And so what you have to learn how to do is make sure that, or at least a trick that I've taught myself is, I've got to have 100 of those before I make a paycheck. So when you start out, if you're not on an appointment, you need to be making phone calls, and you need to be finding somebody that's out there looking for an agent that's hungry. And so I think your most important time of your entire career is your first 90 to 180 days, because that's when you're going to have the least amount of distractions in your business, and you can sit down and you can be with yourself, and you can just absolutely prospect your brains out and build that database that those people are only going to be looking for you. So I would only call for, just listed just solds within those first 90 to 180 days so that you can build market share. And I would only be calling the people that are closest to you, because they're going to be the ones that you don't have to drive furthest. You drive the closest to you, and those people are going to know who you are. You're going to know more about the area, versus if you're calling for sub owner or an expired that's an hour from your house, you may not know everything about that town. So I would say build your database first, and then provide value throughout the rest of your entire career, because that's going to be what you're most knowledgeable on.
Anything else?
That's about it. I know yesterday I was in a lot better of shape, but today I got a lot more brain fog.
I think you had taken the pre-workout yesterday.
I did it again today. Something else must have been what it was.
Oh, that's all right. So listen, real quick on rejection. I was listening to one of Mike's old recordings today, and if I can add to what you said, Mike had talked about when he does a seminar, he would be thrilled and he would be doing backflips if 10% of the people in the seminar listened to anything he said.
Yeah.
He would be doing cartwheels. But on the other side of that, because life is both negative and positive, 90% of them rejected his thoughts. And so I heard someone say at a retreat once, we're in the rejection business. The more rejection I get, the more money I make.
That's right.
And so, we talk about, give the 10% tithe, the 10% rule, save 10%. The key number is the 10%.
Yep.
And so if we get a 10% return, that means a 90% rejection rate.
That's right.
So, instead of focusing on the 90% rejection rate, let's focus on the 10%. Or, as Mike would say, let's look for the yes.
Yep.
And so, I think we both know who you're talking about. And what I would say to that gentleman is focus on the wins. They picked up the phone. They let you ask the questions. They hung up on you. Okay, you got another 30 calls. If we play the numbers game, expireds and buy owners, you go through 30 contacts. 20 of them will reject you.
That's
5
right.
of them, you'll get a follow-up, opportunity. And 1 out of the 30 is an appointment. Okay, for past clients database, that's 10 out of 1. So 10 to 1 ratio. You call 10, you get a lead. And for just listed, just sold, like you just said, that's 100 to 1.
Yeah.
I would argue it's 100 to 2. Because if you talk to 100 people in a neighborhood, you're going to find one person who has to sell and buy. That's 2 deals.
Yeah.
Right. So most of us just don't run the numbers. And then the first 90 days, I think Mike had a book in which his first 90 days, he made 100 contacts per day, 5 days a week. And that year, that 18-month period, he sold 160 transactions. Now, this is back in the 70s, I think, or, whenever it was. But do that now. I saw that last year. I made 100 contacts. The following month, I made 100,000. And like you experienced. So, listen, thank you guys. Any other questions, guys, before we let Mr. Peters go back to his cow tipping?
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to being able to help anybody out or anybody being able to help me out, because we're all in this to grow together. And they say 87% of agents fail within the first year. Now, when I got into the business, it was the first 5 years. So,
yeah, well, one of the reasons we started this process is, number one, Mr. Chris Hardy inviting me to his podcast. I felt really good, and I was able to contribute. And a bunch of people reached out and asked me what I was doing. I led them to Mike. We have the National Prospectors Group. We're building out the YouTube, the podcast here, and we're just trying to grow and make an impact and make our moms proud and do the right thing. So I'll talk to you guys soon.
all right. Y'all have a great day.
Great job, guys.
Thank you. I'm hitting the wrong button.